Okay, welcome to ALC Tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how to make a Halloween scene using After Effects. I'm treating this as if this is the first time you've ever used After Effects. I think this will be a good introductory project for you to work on, just to familiarize you with a lot of the things that After Effects can do. And this is just barely scratching the surface. There are tons of cool things you can do with this, but this will at least get you used to how files work in here and how you can move them around and make them do some cool stuff. Okay, so this is the scene that you just saw at the beginning, but I'm going to start over for you. So I'm just going to go here, new project. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a nice blank area here. So the first thing we want to do is import all of the assets that we might use for our Halloween scene. So you should have gotten some of these ready in Illustrator already, and then you might want to have some other JPEG or any of those kind of things that you would use as well. I'll show you how to deal with all of them. So let's go to File, Import, File, and right here I've got, where did I put those? Effects? No. Oh. Let's see, classes, digital media. I can't remember where I saved this. Graphics and picture. Okay, so I'm just going to, for now, select all of these pictures that I might use and click Open. Okay, and most of them are JPEGs, but I've got this one that is an Illustrator file that we covered this on the previous tutorial. I'm just going to delete this one because I want to import that one again, but a different way. So I go File, Import, and I will just select the Illustrator file here. You can tell over here, kind Adobe Illustrator document. And here, this is important, instead of footage, we want to change this to composition, retain layer sizes. That way, all of the layers within the Illustrator project will be made their own picture. So we can use them individually instead of as one combined picture. Okay, so composition, retain layer sizes, open, and now it opens as a folder, and then here we have all of our separate layers in there. So we've got a bat, cat, ghost, all that stuff. They aren't really showing up here. See how most of the other ones show a thumbnail? But that's because these ones are all just silhouette of black figures against a black background, so you won't see anything until you drag it in there, but that's fine. Okay, so these are all of the pictures we're going to use. Feel free to use whatever you want. I will make these ones available to you if you want to use those, but I would recommend finding your own things to use. Okay, then I can go here to Composition and New Composition. It also works to just right-click in this blank area here, New Composition. And let's have our settings be, yep, that's what I have, HDTV 1080-24. This will probably be the most common one that you use, since it will match with most of the videos that you shoot. Okay, and that all looks good. And for this, I think the background color, I don't remember if the default is white or black. I set it to a gray just so I can distinguish better from the pictures that might either be white or black. But we're going to put a picture in the background, so this won't matter too much anyway. Okay, so and the rest of that should be good. Okay, so now here is our viewer window where we can see what it's going to look like. And then down here we have our timeline and our composition. And right now we don't have any layers, but it will show layers here once we put some things in. Then this thing shows us some info. You can see like it tells you the XY coordinates of your cursor when you move that around. This is our preview window, so it's like our play controls, that kind of thing. And then we have some effects that you can choose from over here. We'll get to that stuff later. So first of all, what do we want to do first? Let's put a background on there first. So I think I want to use this dark sky one. So I can just click this and drag it into our composition. And it just puts it in at the default size of the picture. And so from there I can click on these corners. Notice how if I just drag it anywhere, it's going to distort the ratio of that. So I'm just going to hold Shift on my keyboard when I drag it. And I'm just going to go up like that. Maybe a little bit bigger. Oops. Make that a little bigger. Okay. Something like that. Okay. So there we have our layer right there. By default, it names it the same name as the picture up there. I'm going to rename that. So I right click, choose rename, and put background. Okay. Now let's put in a few of our other elements, and everything that I have is silhouette type stuff except for the backgrounds, but no, the moon is a real picture. Let's deal with that later though. Let's do this tree. Okay, so I'll drag that on the layer above the background, and then we have a tree here, and maybe I'll scale this bigger as well. Hold the Shift key so it keeps the same ratio, something like that. Okay, so just like in Photoshop, and I think Illustrator works similarly, but lots of programs will have what's called a compositing mode. So especially in pictures like this, it's handy where it's really different colors. So we basically want to make this white invisible. So if you were in Photoshop or something, you could just select all that white color and delete it, but there's actually faster ways to do this. So down here at the bottom, see how we've got this button that says toggle switches and modes. So I'm just going to click on that. And then that every time I click it, it just changes some of the things that show up here on the menu. So with that turned on, see how the mode says normal in both cases. So this one on the tree, and let's rename this while I'm here. Okay, I'm going to let's just show you what happens with a lot of these. If I click darken, oh, that's probably the one we want. So darken will usually get rid of anything that's really bright. So all of that white area just made invisible. Add will do the opposite. So since the tree was black, now that is invisible and you can see the clouds through it. But we want darken in this one. I think multiply will make it so you can kind of see the clouds through a little bit, but so a lot of these different modes are pretty cool. That will depending on the effect you want. So in this case, we'll leave that at darken. Let's put the moon on here. Where did that moon go? Full moon. Okay. I'll just choose this one. This time I'm just going to drag it on here. See how it added it to a new layer here. So let's rename this moon. Okay. We can resize this. Something like that. Okay. Now this one has the opposite problem. It's got a black square around it. We want the black to all be invisible. So, as mentioned before, I think add is the one we want in this case. Okay, but here, see how it's like made it really bright there? It's because some of these dark areas, it's also making them invisible. Well, I guess it's just showing through a lot of it. So I'm just going to try a few of these other ones, see what lighten does. No. Screen, I think that might be the one that we want. So the clouds are still kind of showing through, but that's okay because, I mean, the clouds would be in front of the moon, right? Anyway, you can play around with this and see which one you like the look of the best. That one might work well. I don't know. I'm not going to take a lot of time doing that, but play around with something like that to make the black go away outside of the moon. Okay, then let's put in a couple other things. Oh, so let's try our Illustrator files. So we just drop down the little menu on that folder, and I want a ghost in there. So I'm going to drag this in. And all of these are really small. They start out small, but you can just click on the corner and increase the size of that. Okay, something like that. Now here, so since we did this in Illustrator and it had a transparent background, we don't have to change the mode. It just makes there's no background around it. But since it's a ghost, we might want it to be kind of transparent, right? So how about in this case, I think screen is the one we want. No? Soft light. There we go. So that way it kind of lets the background show through a little bit. Okay, so there's our little ghost. Let's put some gravestones on the ground here. Okay. Now notice when they're so small like that, it makes it kind of hard to, resize them because you can't even click the corners. I'm going to undo that. If you want to zoom in on your screen here, just scroll in on your mouse. Every time you scroll, then it zooms in on the screen. So I'm scrolling in, scrolling out. So that way I can scroll in here, click on one of those corners, and zoom back out. Oops. There we go. So let's move this, make it be like this is some kind of cemetery here around the tree. Okay, let's put another grave here. And we can resize that. And the third one. Okay, then I'll zoom out so I can maybe let's put that one there and this one on the other side. Whoops. Move that to the other side of the tree. Okay, got a nice little spooky cemetery going on here. All right, another thing we want to do, notice how the tree has really good detail on it and the moon, but our ghost and these things are getting all pixelated, which shouldn't happen. We made them in Illustrator, so they are vector images, which that's the point of doing something as a vector so that it doesn't get pixelated on the sides. All we need to do, go back here, click on toggle switches again to your main thing. All these ones that are Illustrator files, see this little sun icon here for vector layer, continuously rasterize, it says. So I'm just going to turn those on. Once that's on, now see how it cleaned up all the edges. So now you can make that as big as you want on the screen and it'll still look good. Oops. No. Sorry. Where did it go? Where are you? Okay. So if you ever zoom in way too big or too little, whatever, just click on this and you can click fit and it'll fit back into your screen. Okay. Those are looking nice. What about do we want one more thing? Haunted house? Let's try a house in there. Okay, so let's put that in there and rasterize that. I don't know if we want that or not. It might be better without it. So in that case, if I want to just hide it, I can turn that off, or I can click on that and just delete the layer. Okay, so we've got our basic scene, and I want to show you how you can use this for animation. You can make some things move around. Let's add a spider in here. Where's our spider? There it is. So let's have this kind of dangle from the tree. That's probably about the right size. Maybe we want this like over. Come on. Maybe we'll have it start kind of hidden in the branch, and then it can come down at some point. I can't click on it anymore. That's because I'm selecting the tree, because that's all around it. Okay, we'll deal with that in a second. So we're going to make the spider go down like that, and then go back up. We're going to make this ghost kind of maybe float along the bottom, and then let's make another ghost come up like from behind this grave and come towards us, like it's coming towards the camera. Okay, I think that will be good enough for this. Okay, first let's get our last ghost and put that on there. Ghost number 2. So we'll have it start somewhere around here, like that. And let's continuously rasterize with this. Okay. So first of all, let's do the spider first. I'm just going to turn off these 2 ghosts so they don't distract us, and let's just deal with the spider here. Okay, so I select. There's the layer. So while we're here, let's save this project. I just hit Command S, and I'm calling this Scarescape. Scarescape 3, because I've already done 2 of them. Okay. So we're going to want to find our transform coordinates on here. So I just drop this down. There's transform right there. And there's 5 properties that you can control using transform. So you've got anchor point. So that's basically telling it what the middle of our object is. So you can see the anchor point right here, kind of that little target thing. So that means that if I go up here and rotate it, it will rotate around that anchor point. Whereas if I move the anchor point, let's say to the corner up here, and then I try and rotate it, it rotates around where that anchor point is. Okay? So if you ever want to change that, that's how you do it. This is the move anchor point button, and rotate tool was the other thing I used. We're not going to deal with that in the spider's case, so I'll just go to my regular thing over here, and if I hold the space bar down, my cursor changes to a hand, so I can pan this over, and I want it to start right here. Okay. So I want to make it so it's like behind this tree here, so that it doesn't, this little white thing doesn't show through. But I'm going to do that later, otherwise I won't be able to see it very well. Okay, so go back to our transform things. Position, that's one thing we're going to want to adjust. And scale, we'll leave that how it is. Opacity, I think we'll leave that how it is too. So with the spider, we're just going to change its position. So this little thing, zoom in here for you. All of these, see how they have a little stopwatch? So this is your ability to have keyframes on that layer. So anytime you see a stopwatch, that means basically you can have animation settings for that property. So if I click on it to turn it on, now notice over here how it added a little diamond. So that's our first keyframe. So that's telling it at this point of 0 seconds, the position of the spider will be these numbers. These are your X and Y coordinates. Okay? Now, if I move over to 4 seconds, and I can change the position either by clicking and dragging on one of these. So in this case, it would be the Y coordinate. I can just drag it straight down. Let's zoom out so I can see what I'm doing. Oops, I didn't want to change scale. Okay. Or if I click on it over here, I can move it wherever, and it changes the coordinates. But I want to just go straight down like that. Okay. Now notice it just by doing that, it added a new keyframe right here. Okay, so now it will gradually go from the first one to the second one, and then it stops. Okay? So then I want it to go back up to the first point. So either I could just move later and then change the position back up like that. So now it comes down, and then it moves right back up. But spiders don't really move like that, right? It would come down and it would dangle for a little bit, and then it would go back up, or it would just detach itself and crawl away. But that's a little too hard for this thing. Okay, so I want it to kind of stay down here for a little bit. So I'm just going to click on this keyframe. Once they're there, if you click on them, you can move them around to change the time. Now at the 10-second mark, it will go back up, or 12-second mark. Okay, I'll put that at 10, and then I'll click this one, the second keyframe, and if I go here to edit, copy, then let's go here to 6 seconds and go edit, paste. Then it pasted that keyframe, and now in between these two, since they have the exact same value, it doesn't move at all. I could put in, let's just change this a little bit, maybe have it go back up just a touch. Okay, so see how it added another keyframe? And now I'll click and drag the selection so both of those are selected. Command C to copy, Command V to paste. So I just clicked up here to move the timeline, so it's going to paste it wherever that line is. Command V to paste, Command V to paste again. So now it'll kind of go up and down a few times, and then it goes back up. Okay, so let's see how this looks. If I hit play up here, ooh, there goes our spider. And there it goes back up. Okay. So we could go in and fine tune the values of that. It looked to me like it was going back up a little bit too fast when it was jerking there, but you can play around with that as you want. So also over here we've got our keyframe, well, I don't even know what it's called, but basically if I have the line directly on a keyframe, then this diamond is lit up right here. If I want to go to the next keyframe, just click on that arrow. So once you're directly on a keyframe, then if you can change the value of it, and it will remember that. So I could go back here and drag that down a little bit and adjust that keyframe. Okay, and then here that arrow's grayed out because it's the last keyframe. It won't go to any others. Okay, so that's good for our spider, and that's basically how you would make something move across the screen. So next, let's play around with our ghost a little bit. Let's do this one. I'm going to rename this Ghost 2. Okay, so we had that hidden. Now this one, I don't want to see it at all at the beginning, right? I only want to see the gravestone there. So in this case, let's go to our transform tool, and we're going to want to adjust the position just like we did with the spider, so it'll kind of move out from behind there. We want to adjust the scale because it's going to get bigger, making it look like it's getting closer to the camera. Let's do rotation as well, and opacity. So opacity is how see-through it is. Right now it's at 100%, meaning you can't see through it at all. But remember on the first ghost how we switched it to be somewhat transparent, so let's go here to toggle switches, and this one's set to normal. The other ghost was at soft light, so let's do the same thing there. Soft light, there we go. And we'll switch back. Okay, so click our little arrow, opacity. So they've all got their default keyframes set there. So I'm going to drag opacity down to 0%, so that makes it totally invisible. So let's say after the spider goes back up, then we will have the ghost come out from behind the grave. So I want to add another keyframe right here, but I don't want to change it. I want it to still be at 0 this whole time, but at this point start showing up. So if I click on the little diamond here, then it adds a keyframe, but that means that it stays at 0% in between these two. Okay. Then let's say for the next 4 seconds I want it to come back up to 100%. Okay, and then let's go back here. We'll say this is the time that it's going to start growing and moving as well. So let's just put a keyframe in for all of these. Okay, so now we have 4 keyframes there and 4 there, and then we'll go over to here. If I want them to all happen at the same time, then I can just hit this arrow to line it up with the next keyframe. Okay, so let's change the rotation a little bit, like that. Okay, -25, we said that. Let's change the scale so it gets a little bigger. And then position, I don't want to, I'm just going to drag it on there where I want it. Okay, so it's coming out from behind the tombstone there. Okay, so see how it changes gradually, like that. Now at that point, we'll say that's when it's going to come nearest towards the camera. So let's move up to 18 seconds. Maybe we'll have it come in a little faster. Well, we'll do it at 18 first, and then I can move them. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here so we can see better. I'm going to move the position to like right about the middle of the screen. And then the scale, let's make it huge. Just going to click and drag that. You could also click and type in it. Let's try 6,000. Something like that. Okay, and even more rotation, or should it rotate back the other way? I don't know. You can do what you want. Okay, so it comes out from behind there, and then it starts coming towards us. Wah. Okay, then at that point, I mean, there are ways you could make it actually go past the camera, but that's a little more complicated. We'll do that in a future tutorial. In this case, we will just make it go back to 0 transparent. So notice how we don't have another keyframe here. So if I just went here and dragged this down to 0, then it's going to gradually be changing from this keyframe where it's at 100% back to 0, which maybe is fine. Maybe we can leave it like that. But if we want it to stay a little more visible as it's growing, we could go here and drag this back up to 100. So that way it'll stay at 100% until it gets there, and then it starts fading. But you know, it kind of freezes right there, so let's have it keep moving as it's fading back out. So let's I don't know, we'll mostly just increase the scale some more. Let's type in 8,000 and rotate a little bit more. Okay, so now it gets there and it keeps going as it fades out. Something like that. That would be cool. Okay, so now we've got keyframes on all of these values here. What else would we need to do? We've got this other ghost in here. Let's rename this one. Let's turn that on. Okay, so what if... Oh, I know what we want to do. Yeah. Okay, so this will show you another really cool thing about After Effects, how you can parent an object to another object. Okay, so in this case, let's move this ghost over here so it starts out behind this tree, and let's kind of scale it down about the same size as the other one. Okay, so on all of your layers, you have these little swirly things. I believe they're called pick whips. So if I click on one, notice how you click it and then you can drag it onto another layer. So what this does is the one that you drag it onto becomes the parent. So the child will do everything that the parent does. Okay, so if I click on Ghost 1 and drag it up to the name of Ghost 2, now it will follow everything that the other one does. It looks like it only applies to the size and rotation and that kind of stuff. Because see how he's not not going transparent at all. So we might need to do something else for that. I'm trying to remember how to do that. But you can do that. Make its opacity also match the other one. So let's drop that down, and I'm going to move this layer up. So if I just click on it and move it up above the other ones, I'll collapse them all so you can see it better. See how you can rearrange your layers. So I'm just going to move that so it's right next to ghost number 2. It'll make it a little easier to do this. And let's move this up so I can see them. Okay, so this one, let's turn on, option. That's right. Okay. So if you hold option and then click on the keyframe thing, hold option, and then this drops down, and now you have a pick whip on that particular control. So if I click on the opacity and drag it onto the opacity of ghost number 2, there, now see how it disappeared? So now as ghost number 1 shows up, ghost number 2 will copy its opacity as well. Okay? So this will come in really handy. Let's add one more ghost and have that copy those as well. So let's bring ghost 3 down right here. Rename that ghost 3. Okay, there he is hanging out. So let's have this guy start right down here. And I'm going to drop down, transform, go to, first I'll just pick whip the whole thing. So I click on ghost 3, drag that up to ghost 2. So now he's going to move at the same time. Okay, so maybe since they're rotating, I wonder how this is working. Because it's like he's rotating along the center point of that. Okay, so over here we can undo that. See how it shows what the parent is? So if I click on this layer, I'm going to turn that off. So what if I just pick whip all of these things? So I hold option, position, and I drag that up to position of ghost 1. Do the same with scale. Option, click there, pick whip that to the scale. Option, click rotation, pick that to rotation, and opacity, option click, drag that up to opacity. Okay, so let's collapse this and collapse that. And notice how this ghost is a lot darker, and it also gets all pixelated when it grows. So let's turn this on, and then let's go back here and switch this to soft light. There, they're all the same. Very good. All right, so there we go. Let's do one last thing, and that is we can add some, show you how to add some effects. So let's say we wanted to change the color of one of these things. I kind of like how the spider is right now, but maybe we can change that white to red. Should we try and do that? Okay. So let's drag this back down so you can see more of them. Over here in your effects, you can either go through and just search in the categories, but color correction is probably what we're looking for. But if you know a specific one you're searching for, just type it in. In this case, we're looking for tint. Okay, so it's this one, tint, and then I'll just drag that onto the spider layer. Okay, and then let's zoom in on that so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so if I have that layer selected, then our controls for that effect show up right here. You can also go back to your project settings or your list of assets in the project if you click that arrow. So here's our effects. So map black to, so we can change either what we want the black color to change to. So if I want it instead of black to be red, I can do that. But I don't, so I'm going to reset. I want to change the white color to be something. So let's go white, and let's move that to like a dark red. I think that is dark red, but I'm not sure. It might be green. Okay, there we go. So tint is pretty easy to just change certain colors into something else. And there's all kinds of other effects that you'll get into later, but that way at least you basically know how they're controlled. And notice how these have stopwatches too. So I could animate that color changing as well. If we wanted to start out white, I could turn on the keyframe thing there, and now that I drop down, effects is added, and tint, and here there's a keyframe on map. So let's say I wanted it to gradually change color by the time it got down here, so I could click on add a keyframe and have it gradually change to white. Okay, so any of those effects you can animate their values, but we don't want that to happen, so let's just turn that off. So it's just going to stay red the whole time. Okay, so we'll call it good for that scene. In the one I did previously, I added some fog stuff to it, but that's a little bit more advanced. We'll do that in a separate thing. Once you have this how you like it, then you need to export it. And so that basically combines all of these elements into one movie file that you can then either share as it is or bring it back into an editing program and add sound effects or any of that kind of stuff. So we are going to go up here to File. Well, let's save our project first. Okay, that's saved. File, Export, Add to Render Queue. Okay, so that adds it to this list. I guess it does that because you could, maybe you're working on 4 or 5 projects and you want to just finish them all at once, and then you can render them all at the same time and go get something to eat or whatever instead of having to wait for each one individually. Okay, and then these are the default settings. So right here, if we ProRes 422, I think this is one that I made. I don't think it's the default. I think lossless is the default, which is fine, but that's a really big file size, and you usually, in my case, I haven't usually needed it that big. So if you click on the word there, so it's going to be a QuickTime movie. It's going to have all these kinds of colors. The good thing about lossless, and we'll get into this later, but if you change it to RGB plus alpha, then you could export it as a movie that has a transparent background if you want to add it to something else, but we don't need to worry about that right now. What we do want to do is go to Format and change it. So animation, this is the thing that makes it a really big file size. Generally, Apple ProRes 422 is a really high quality and also pretty big file size, but not as big as animation. So this is a good one to export it as. If you wanted a smaller video size, H.264 is a decent one. But for this, yeah, since I know I'm going to put it into Final Cut afterwards, let's do this one. ProRes 422 and hit OK, and then hit OK again. So once you do that, it'll say Custom QuickTime, and it would be a good idea to just make a template of this. So these are all your templates, and you can see that I have one now called ProRes 422 because I did this. So if you click Make Template, and then here you can type in the name of it, ProRes 422. And if I hit OK, it'll create it as a template, but I've already done it, so I'm going to hit Cancel. Okay, so there's my template, ProRes 422. Output to, if you click on the name here, this tells you what the file is going to be called and where you're saving it. So in this case, it's going to my movies folder and Scarescape version 2, and I will hit save. Okay, now it's not doing anything yet. See this render button? So once I click that, then it will show my progress right there, and once it gets to the end, then I will have a finished movie. So I will fast forward this and we can see what it looks like. Okay, that's finished exporting. Over here it tells me it took 44 seconds to do that. Okay, so now I can hide After Effects and close that. If I go to my movies, here it is. Let's see how it turned out. Okay, so after watching that, I think the ghosts take way too long to come out and then fly towards the camera. So it's easy to go back and adjust stuff afterwards. So if I remember how ghost number 2 is the one controlling everything. So if I'm just going to click and drag and select all these keyframes. And so we want it to happen a little bit sooner in the timeline, and especially this part, it's going way too slow. So let's select all these ones and drag them forward. Now let's hit play here. So notice up here it says not real time. It's because it's trying to render the information at the same time it's doing it. So if it's going real slow like that for you, just going to hit stop right here. You can change your resolution to, half, third, quarter. So let's just put it at quarter resolution. So now it doesn't look as good for the time being, but it will be able to render a lot faster. So now if I hit play, then it should play back at closer to the right speed. Let's go back. Okay. That's better. We can make it happen even faster if we wanted. Maybe let's drag just that one up. Okay, move them all a little bit closer to each other. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so then also, well, yeah, that'll be good for now. Notice how by default it made our composition 30 seconds long. So if you want it longer or shorter than that, you can go up here to Composition, Settings, and where are we at? Oh, Duration. So if we wanted it longer than 30 seconds, we can add time to this. In my case, I think I want it to be shorter. So I'm just going to go over here, see on the edge how it's got these little handles, Work Area End. If I click and drag that to the left here, And now if I right click in this gray space here, trim comp to work area, so now it cut off the end that was outside of that. Okay, so now it'll only last 16 seconds, but that's just in case you want to do that. Okay, then I will go back and add to render queue again, and it keeps the, well, I've changed this to be my default setting, so, but let's name this Scarescape 3 and hit render. Okay, then if we go to our Finder, and let's try that. Okay, good enough for your first After Effects movie. So play around with that, make something cool and spooky, and so like I said, that movie is silent, and it would be a lot more effective if it had sound effects to it. So you can take that movie into Final Cut or anything else and add your sound effects and then export it again. So have fun with these. I'm excited to see what you come up with. We'll see you later.